Okay, hi everybody. I just wanted to make a video that sort of explained a little bit about the AC method, um, or what we call factoring a quadratic with leading coefficient greater than 1. In class, I'll also try to explain like the trial and error method, but the AC method is it's a pretty straightforward method. Although there are probably a couple more steps that are involved in it, but if you're diligent about keeping your signs straight and finding factors of numbers, then you'll be in very good uh, condition. So remember we talked about a quadratic, and that's always in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So remember we have ax squared plus bx plus c, and this is what we call a quadratic. So the important thing in the AC method is to identify, so here's our quadratic, right? And if I think of this as ax squared plus bx plus c, to identify a, b, and c. And again, it's important to keep track of our signs. So in this quadratic where we have 3x squared plus 8x minus 3, our a is positive 3, our b is positive 8, and our c is negative 3. Notice that it's only the coefficient, right? There are no variables that are involved in this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find a times c, which in our case is going to be 3, right, times a negative 3, which gives me a negative 9. So then I'm going to look for factors. Look for factors or two numbers that multiply to negative 9, and they have to add up to b. So we take a times c and then multiply to negative 9 that add up. Whoops, and I'll say and add up to b, right? Or positive 8 in our situation. And I think I introduced this in class. I used kind of like a little X here, right? So what that does is it helps me sort out what are the two numbers. So, and I have to keep track that the two numbers have to multiply out to negative 9. And then, and they have to add up to positive 8. And so we thought about 3 and 3, 3 and negative 3, right? But that doesn't work because those two numbers don't add up to positive 8. But if you think about two numbers that have to multiply out to negative, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So, you could try the 1 and the 9. You can try the 3s and the 3s, right? If I try 1 and 9, right, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So let's try negative 1, positive 9. So that tells me that negative 1 times positive 9 equals a negative 9, and that works. And then negative 1 plus a positive 9 equals a positive 8. So that works too. So my two factors now are negative 1 and positive 9, right? So those two factors work. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expand out, right? So let's do, in this case, 4 situation, right? So let's expand out our quadratic to 4 terms. And what I'm doing here is I'm making 8x, that middle term, I'm going to make that negative 1x plus 9x. So here, let's say I'll do, so that gives me 3x squared. I keep that first term. And I'm going to expand out the second one, and I'm going to make it negative 1x plus 9x, right? So that's the same as 8x. So I've just kind of like rewritten it so it's a little bit. So now I have 4 terms, and then I have my minus 3 at the end. Right, so what I've done is I've taken this minus 8x and I've made it, right, negative 1x plus 9x. Okay, so now when I think about, now I've expanded to 4 terms, I should think of grouping, right? So now I have 4 terms. Think grouping. So if I rewrite what I have here, 3x squared minus 1x plus 9x minus 3. If you remember, I'm going to group, my first group is here, right? And my second group is here. So if I factor out, if I look at 3x squared minus 1x, I can factor out an x, and I'm left with 3x minus 1. Excuse me. And then in my second group, between my plus 9x minus 3, right, I can factor out a plus 3, and I'm left with 3x minus 1. So now I can factor out that binomial, right? This is good. I see that I have a 3x minus 1 here, so I factor that out, right? And then I'm left with, what am I left inside? I'm left with an x and a plus 3, right? So I'll have an x plus 3. So that's what's here, right? And I factored out the 3x minus 1. So my final answer is 3x minus 1 times x plus 3. And that's my answer in factored form.